Warning: this podcast contains adult material and is not suitable for anyone under the age of 18. You have been warned. Do you like movies?
Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe fuck yourself.
What do you think about horror movies? Blood, guts, and mayhem.
Groovy.
Then sit back, relax, and listen to the Dead and Rotting Podcast.
So we're here on the Dead and Rotting Podcast, and I've got my guests here, Pat and Alyson. If y'all would, just kind of introduce yourself and tell us what you do here in the movie biz.
My name is Pat Mills, and I am a director, and I directed the film that Alyson wrote called The Retreat.
And my name is Alyson Richards, and I wrote and was one of the producers on The Retreat.
What is it that got y'all involved in movies to begin with?
So fun fact, at least I can talk about my experience. Pat and I actually met in high school. And one of the things that helped me fall in love with movies, I loved movies as a kid. And then Pat and I used to skip high school and go to the video store and rent a bunch of movies and watch them when we were supposed to be at school. So a lot of my sort of youth is around my love of movies.
Yep. And we actually watched a lot of different genres together. Like, we obviously would do comedy, but we both discovered that we both had a very similar love for the horror genre. So we would watch horror movies together. And then we've made several features together. Two of them were comedies, and The Retreat was our first, delving into the horror genre. So that was really fun, considering we both loved the genre so much. And, our reference points for the film were very similar because we watched together.
So I know y'all do a lot of writing. I know, Alyson, you did for The Retreat, and I know that, Pat, you've done some writing as well. What is sort of your process of writing? Do you kind of start with an outline, say, or you just kind of jump in there and start writing?
I think for me...
Go
ahead, Pat.
Go ahead, Al.
I was gonna say, I think for me it depends on the project, and I've sort of approached different scripts for different reasons and in different ways. Sometimes it's an idea around a scene, or sometimes it's an idea around a theme. And I think The Retreat was really around a theme and sort of a moment of inspiration. And then the script honestly went through so many different versions of it. It got developed over many years and sort of kept changing. I think as far as as a general answer, it really depends on the project.
And for me, I do a bit of both depending on my mood. I'm better off when I follow an outline that I've written, but sometimes I'm just frustrated and impatient. And I just want to dive in and make mistakes and fix them as they come. But that can lead to a roadblock, which is never very, very good. And I, throughout my life, I think I have a lot of feature scripts that are about 50 pages long because I get stuck. So it's a lesson that I need to learn, that I need to outline more, but I never learn it. So there we go.
You sound like me. I have a lot of those as well. So what were some of the ideas and stuff that kind of led you to writing The Retreat?
I think as far as sort of the origin of the idea, so my now wife and I were in Australia, and we were staying at this really beautiful wilderness retreat cabin in the middle of nowhere, super quaint, super cute, and I think also really creepy in a lot of ways, because what ended up happening, it was really picturesque, and we were there alone, and we never saw our hosts, but we started, there'd be little notes from them. But everything started to feel a little bit off. And I remember one time, we never saw anybody, but every time we would leave and go for a walk and we came back, there'd be a new note or a new little something there. So it just started to have this feeling like we were being watched. And then as a queer couple, and particularly as a female couple, it started to take on this other, for me, this sense of unease. And I have a vivid imagination, and so took it sort of to like, what is the worst case scenario of what happens here? Yeah, there's a scene in the movie in which the characters get to the wilderness retreat, and there's a basket of food and it's covered in bugs, and that's based on actually exactly what happened to us.
Oh
And it
no.
was this, seemingly beautiful basket of baked goods, and then as soon as I leant down, it was covered in crawling Australian insects.
Yeah. So, what were some of the struggles that y'all might have had while you were shooting the retreat?
We don't know where to begin.
I hit a
We
nerve.
had some weather challenges. I'll start with that. So the beginning of the movie starts with this like beautiful autumnal landscape with like orange leaves and very, very, fall perfection. But I think about 4 days in, we had Christmas and it snowed. We shot in October. We didn't think that we would have an issue with snow, but we shot it north of Toronto. It's like, I don't know. There's something that happens when you drive an hour north of Toronto where there's snow when you don't expect it. And we pretty much had like an entire foot of snow that we had to contend with, which for a director, I wanted to do a lot of like exterior shots that were in a wide to show these women in their environment. And suddenly we had to problem solve and do a lot of things in extreme close-ups while we would brush the snow out of the shot. So I think that the hardest thing was in terms of like our weather continuity was really, really compromised. And so we had to do a lot of problem solving. And that gas station scene that's, 15 minutes into the movie was supposed to be an exterior, like while they're pumping the gas, all that was supposed to happen outside, but we had ice and like blizzards that day, so we had to shift everything indoors. So that was one of our challenges.
I would have never
Yeah,
guessed.
I was just going to echo that. I think because the whole movie sort of time-wise takes place over, let's call it, 30 hours, but we shot it over 5 weeks, and I think we had every season possible that happened that year. And the coldest day of the entire year that year happened to be when we were shooting that gas station scene, which was very unseasonable. Like it was like a completely different day than it should have been. And I remember Pat and I sort of getting there, and everybody was doing their best to clear the snow. We rented an ice truck that was melting the snow out front of the gas station because we were sort of determined to try to continue to shoot the scene outside. And I was madly rewriting it in case we needed it to shoot it inside. And then the actors showed up and they were trying to talk outside, and you could see their breath. And we were still like, no, we can make this work. We'll fix it in post. And then as soon as we went to go and start, rolling the cameras, fresh snow just started to come out of the sky, like, and not a little bit of it, like just like that classic. If we were shooting a Hallmark Christmas movie, it would have been perfect, but we weren't. And so that's when we kind of gave up and went inside and shot the scene there.
A Hallmark Christmas movie about like somebody who has to save a gas station. Feel like But one of the things is like when you have snowfall, when you're shooting an exterior, the way you deal with it is with a blowtorch. And guess where you can't have open fire? A gas station. So that was like that's why we thought that the ice truck would come in handy, but no, it was like one thing after the other, and we lost so much time on that day. But that was just the spirit of the filming, where it was like every day we had a new challenge, but we managed to solve it, so even though we lost a lot of time each day because of a new problem, but we all pushed through, and we still love each other, so that's always a plus.
Exactly.
Another big sort of problem that we had was we had one of our lead cast member got sick, and so she was written into almost every scene, and we lost her, I think, was it 3 days or 4 days?
It was 3 or 4. If it was 3, it felt like 4.
Yeah. And then so we sort of juggled everything schedule wise with our assistant directors who were sort of helping make the schedule. and figured out how to work around it. And I did some rewriting. Pat did some really awesome sort of rethinking of how he was going to shoot stuff. And we kind of came up with a plan, and then lo and behold, one of the other actors had a family emergency, and so they had to leave set. So we just felt like there were certain days where everything that could go wrong just continued to go wrong. We also had some production vehicles, like the truck that's in the movie must have died. I think that thing died at least 7 times, and then one of our crew members ran it off the road into the ditch at one point. So we were very grateful and happy. Everybody was safe. Everybody made it to the end, and and we finished the movie. But it was certainly a challenging one.
Definitely.
So I know that y'all have both directed before, obviously. What are some things that you look for as far as like setting up shots? Like, what are some things that you want to make sure that is there when you're directing? Make sure that's there when you're about to shoot.
Well, I think that for me, while we were developing the retreat, I was really interested in those like horror movies that are really about somebody in an environment or an unfamiliar environment. And like this is just one example, but a lot of those shots of Shelley Duvall in The Shining is her very, very small in the frame. And, the Overlook Hotel being this like grand thing in the background. So she's sort of like, swallowed by the environment. And I really wanted to do that, especially with this like creepy farmland, and take something that's like beautiful and creepy at the same time. So, we all love the fall landscape, but there's just something a little unsettling about it all. And our cinematographer, David Sherman, did a really great job. And he did a film called What Keeps You Alive. He shot that, and I was really drawn to the visuals of that movie. So I met with him, I chatted with him about the film. He read the script, he liked the script. So it was just really about like finding a way to make your lead characters seem very vulnerable when they need to feel vulnerable, but then also very powerful when they need to feel powerful. So that sort of kind of went into the design in terms of shots and shooting our characters. Alyson, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, I mean, I think the only thing else that I would add for this movie, and I think in horror in general, like one of the things that Pat and I had talked about a lot is like the things that you imagine in your head being scarier than the things that you can see head on. And so I think we spent a lot of time sort of like playing with the darkness of it. Like you're in the forest, you don't necessarily see everything. Not necessarily framing somebody right in the middle of it if it's one of the bad guys, having them sort of poke out from different areas. So I think playing in horror with maybe it's different than if you're doing a comedy where you want everything bright and you can see everything. And so I think we played with light quite a bit too.
So did the strikes affect you guys at all with any projects that you're doing?
The strikes, yeah. I mean, not obviously on the retreat because we shot that a while ago, but right. I will say that COVID affected us. So we shot we shot the movie right before COVID, and then during our post-production process where we would normally go back and do pickups, we couldn't bring any of the cast back because COVID was at its strictest and scariest at the time. Right. And so the actor unions wouldn't allow us to get people together. So we kind of had to work around that a little bit. And then the thing that was, a shame for us when the film came out, there was nobody was going to theaters. And so our distributor, we didn't end up doing theatrical or festivals. Like it went straight. They sold it to Showtime, which was awesome. But we sort of missed out on that festival experience. And Pat and I actually, there was an in-person screening of it recently, and we went, and it was our first time seeing it with an audience, and it was super fun because they were cheering, they were gasping, they were sort of along for the ride, and it felt very, very fulfilling to see it with people.
Are y'all planning on doing any other horror projects here in the future?
I'm working on a horror movie right now about zombies. So that's awesome. That's my project that I'm excited about.
Yeah, and I'm currently working on a queer body horror movie.
Okay.
That is equal parts cringe comedy and body horror, which is kind of fun and strange, but it's very early stages of writing.
Is there a place where people can see what you're doing as far as your upcoming projects and what you're currently doing or have done? websites and stuff like that?
Yep. I mean, I tend to update my news section whenever I have it on my website, which is www.pat-mills.com. Do you have to say www anymore, or is that just implied? But anyway, that's my website. And I sometimes post on my Instagram, which is Pat K Mills.
Yeah, and I'm at my website is Alyson, which is Alyson. So it's AlysonRichards.com. And Richards as it sounds. And I think that's my Instagram thing too. I think it's Alyson Richards.
I just wanted y'all to get a chance to plug your
Thank
own
you.
stuff there.
Yeah, thanks.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
What's your favorite horror movie?
My favorite horror movie, probably the original Dawn of the Dead.
Oh,
Yes.
nice.
I think it's 79, Dawn of the Dead. I mean, the remake was good, but the original, I think, it's still scary. I mean, and gross and all the good things that seeing that when you're young and seeing all that stuff, it's just like I was really scared of zombies growing up. I mean, I wouldn't read books about them. I didn't want to think about them because to me, that's one of the only monsters that might actually possibly be real. And so zombies have always kind of been my thing, and that I think that started it. It kind of started with Night of the Living Dead, the original, but when I saw the original Dawn of the Dead, it just kind of, it really got, I guess, got my horror nerd going.
I love the neon red blood in that movie.
Oh yeah, and
It's
the
so like bright.
and
I
that
love it.
green paint on their face.
Yes,
And it's just,
totally.
I didn't really think about that when I was younger until I saw it like later on, how kind of cheesy it is now, but still very, very much a good movie. It's not just a horror movie, it's got action, it's got drama, it's all kinds of stuff in there. So yeah, I think that's probably my favorite horror movie. How about y'all? What's y'all's favorite horror movies?
I always find it hard to pick one, but so I'm not going to, but I will mention one that I just rewatched because basically off of what you just said about things aging in a way that's interesting. So I just rewatched The Raft, which was one of the shorts in Creepshow 2,
Oh
I think.
yeah.
Oh
Uh-huh.
my God, I love The Raft.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so I just rewatched that because I was talking to a filmmaker about it, and we were talking about something, and I was like, oh, we should rewatch that. And so but it has not aged very well. Both
The sexual assault, perhaps? Yes.
sexual assault, the effects,
Yeah.
the style of performance, I would say.
Right.
But I remember that one always being so creepy as a kid, and I think as far as a simple concept, I love that idea.
Yeah, it's very creepy, especially growing up around here, around like little creeks and areas where we're like, oh, let's go over here and go swimming. Yeah, after watching that, I kind of stayed away from places that afraid of that black goo kind of floating downstream. And
Absolutely.
I won't say like what my favorite is because I do find it hard to make that decision, but only based on what you said about Dawn of the Dead, I was thinking Return of the Living Dead.
oh yeah,
And rewatching that movie older, you're like, oh my God, this is a satire. And I never picked up on that as a kid
oh
because
yeah,
all I saw was like how fucking terrifying that would
yes,
be. But now I realize like, oh my God, every line is hitting comedy, and it made me appreciate it in a different context than I did just purely watching it out of like pure fear as a kid. So just really it's a really, really well made like cartoon of a horror movie,
it
which
really
I love.
is. And I think probably one of the creepiest lines is, or well, I don't know if it's a line, but when the guy's hurting really bad and they look at his back and they're like, "Oh no, your blood is pooling, you're going through rigor mortis and all this." And as a kid, I'm just like, "Oh my God, that's scary." I don't want that to happen to me.
I love the line that I love from that movie is send more paramedics when
Oh
the
yeah,
zombie was on the and then I also love the woman, like the torso that they strap down, and
oh
she
yeah.
keeps on saying brains, brains, but she
Hmm.
has no lips. So how would she be able to pronounce brains? But that's another
Right. And just the fact that she's on there talking, we don't really have talking zombies in other movies, so that's
true.
the sequels. I don't recall them too fondly, but that one pretty awesome.
For sure.
I appreciate y'all being on here and chatting with me for a little bit, and I really enjoyed the retreat. When I found that, I was like, holy crap, I've got to contact whoever made this. And I found Alyson's website, and I sent her an email because I was just like, I gotta chat with these folks, because one, I'd never heard of it before, and two, it caught me off guard because the idea is really creepy, because it's so realistic. It's a possibility that something like that could actually happen, and that people might actually be doing something like that. And for me, that was just, I don't know, it got me hooked from the beginning, and I love the end. And yeah, that's my little take on the retreat. I've been telling my friends, hey, y'all need to watch this as much as I possibly can.
You.
That's awesome. Thanks. How did you find it? Just out of curiosity, how did you stumble on it?
I was just looking on. I've been watching a lot of stuff on Tubi, and it was suggested for me, and I said okay, and I just watched it, and so that's. I wished it was more spectacular than that. the finding it, but that's really what it is.
It's always fun to hear how people come across it, but really appreciate you reaching out. It's been fun to chat.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Well, that does it for us here at the Dead and Rotting Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tim Tanner. And if you like the show, please follow and like on Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, Apple Podcast. And make sure to check the show notes so you can keep up with Alyson and Pat on their website as well as their Instagram. Make sure to check out The Retreat. It is an awesome movie and currently on Tubi. You can watch it for free with just a few commercial interruptions. And if you want to drop us a line, you can just send us an email at deadandrottingpodcast@gmail.com. If you are trying to promote your film and or any kind of independent horror art or anything like that, please let us know. You can find us on Instagram at Dead and Rotting Podcast. You can also find us on Facebook. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great week. Tim Tanner, out.